Hi, my name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, and today's podcast is going to be about project management and program management and how an understanding of project and program management best practices can help customer success managers in the completion of their CS duties. I'm joined today by Samuel Parri. Sam's background includes various positions held at IBM, Telxon, and Cisco Systems, and he has proven knowledge and experience in the world of project management and customer success management. Welcome, Sam, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Rick, for having me.
Well, I think that many of us who aren't formally trained and qualified find the differences between project management and program management a little bit confusing. So before we perhaps get stuck into the details about how customer success managers might use some of the tools, techniques, and best practices of project and program management, would you mind if you perhaps started, please, with just defining project management and program management, and also explaining the difference for us?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, if you look at project management from a dictionary definition standpoint, it's a discipline of initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing of work done by a team to achieve certain goals and specific success criteria. But from a layman's point of view, project management is simply managing resources to achieve a desired outcome. So a simple example, Rick, could be a construction company. And that construction company, let's say, is building a bridge. And that effort would require an on-site project manager that makes sure the proper steel or cement or equipment, people, etc., come together to achieve the success of accomplishing the building of that bridge. Now, conversely, that construction company also would have a program management perspective that would oversee multiple projects to achieve similar desired outcomes. So, for example, that construction manager or director would oversee multiple projects at the same time, where one could be a bridge, one could be a building, one could be road construction, etc. So that's how they relate to each other.
Perfect, thank you. So would it be reasonable to say then that the project is the specific initiative? I mean, if we look at it from a customer success perspective, perhaps a particular engagement with a customer who has purchased our company's products and services that we're working on, that's a project. And maybe also that particular customer success manager is responsible for maybe a dozen, maybe 200 such engagements with customers. And so from their perspective, the program might be that 15 or 20 or however many customer projects that they're working on right now. And each project then is each specific customer engagement. Does that make sense?
It's not only making sense, and as we both know, sometimes projects or various of industries, various customer environments are different. So from a program standpoint, you have to oversee and make sure that everything is according to what the project specific is trying to accomplish.
Well, look, you worked for many years at Cisco in a customer success role. So you brought to that role your project management and program management background. And I'd be interested to understand how useful and relevant you felt that background was to that role, and what it enabled you either to do for the customer or for yourself, or perhaps for your team or for your organization, Cisco, that would perhaps have been harder to do without that background.
You know, I think that's an excellent perspective. I found it extremely useful, Rick. And I've always joked with those around me, whether you're building a bridge or baking chocolate chip cookies, you're managing a project. Again, the project, as I said earlier, could be building a bridge. You're managing multiple projects. Multiple projects could be a mother that who's baking those chocolate chip cookies, say for one child, but having multiple children where all of them are running in different directions, having different needs and goals, if you will. Well, performing customer success alone, I think it's key. You cannot do it alone. It takes a variety and various skill sets coming together to achieve a successful outcome for the customer you're serving.
Right.
So no matter what role you're playing or what outcome you're trying to achieve, I find the great concept to consider is a very simple one, and that is always ask yourself, who does what to whom, when, how, and why? And this includes, by the way, the customer also, because as you know, Rick, the customer has some skin in the game also in what they're trying to accomplish in harmony with you, the vendor or the supplier, trying to achieve that desired outcome. I think one other key point that aligns well with project management is, the on time, within budget, and to the quality and satisfaction of the customer.
So that's a sort of a keeping things on track perspective.
Exactly. And as we know in customer success, metrics, KPIs play a huge part in determining value, the quality of what is trying to be done. Budgets play a big part because they're part of a company's annual budgetary cycle. And last but not least, when you look at time, that too plays an important part to be competitive, to be first in market, and to provide innovation to the customers you're serving.
Most definitely. No, absolutely agreed with you. And I like what you said initially about the keeping in mind the who does what to who, when, how, and why. I hope I got that right. But I like it because having worked with you and alongside you, one of the things that I saw that I was quite impressed with was, you felt like a very safe pair of hands. It felt like you had to use a sailing term, you had your weather eye open at all times to the possibilities of what might need to be done or what could be happening, as well as what is happening, so that you were able to respond reasonably quickly and appropriately to change in real time. Does that sort of gel with you? Or
Absolutely, Rick, 100%.
Well, look, the way I see it is that as a customer success manager, each specific customer initiative, as I said, is could be thought of as a separate project. The program is the entire collection of all such engagements that one is responsible for. Just to play devil's advocate, though, for a moment, I've been told more than once, and by more than one person who is also in the customer success profession, that a customer success initiative is not a project, because projects have stated endpoints and stated outcomes to achieve by that time, and that's the whole point of a project, is you manage the project to its successful conclusion with its outcomes. Whereas, of course, particularly perhaps, let's say, in the world of, for example, software as a service, where you're selling an annual renewable contract, the last thing you want is for the inverted commas, the project, i.e. the customer engagement, to end. You want it to carry on forever, with them renewing each year, and preferably at a higher premium rate. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, very much so. First of all, I think, Rick, everyone would agree, a contract, quote unquote, by definition, is like a project. It has a defined start date, it has a defined end date, and certain criteria / milestones in the journey from start to finish. In addition, when you look at fundamental project management elements to achieve the desired outcome or success, it includes, for example, scope, time, cost, personnel, risk, integration, quality, most importantly, communication. And these elements of project management hold very true to customer success. Why? Because together they all lead to the value that the customer is trying to achieve from the purchase of what they bought. One other key point that's important for a customer success manager that leverages these fundamental project management principles is at any customer at any point in time, as we know, would have multiple projects taking place at the same time. So one simple example, the corporate security team may have a security initiative taking place to further prevent networking threats or attacks. The operations team, at the same time, may be rolling out a network refresh of their infrastructure equipment. And separately, the call center director may be rolling out new features and functions to better serve the customers that the company has. So in this scenario, a customer success manager would need to be able to, quote unquote, program manage and be a part of and help deliver the value of these various initiatives within a single customer, knowing that different people with different skill sets, not only within the customer success manager's company, but also within the customer's company would need to be involved.
Got it. So effectively, it's not really the relationship between the supplier and the customer that is the project. It's what's going on inside that relationship, and that might actually be multiple projects, some of which are going to be the customer's own projects, i.e. the initiatives that they're working on, which is why they bought our products and or services in the first place, which in turn obviously they have their desired and required outcomes that we need to know about and help the customer to achieve the ends they want out of their projects. And then at the same time, arguably, we have our own project, an annual project, which is to get the customer to the point where they're happy enough to say, yes, I'm happy to renew.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, cool. So, well, thank you for that explanation. I think that kind of helps to put perspective on this concept of how we can have something that effectively is not a project, which is an ongoing relationship, yet still get a lot of value from thinking about what we're actually doing with the customer from a project and indeed, as you say, from a program management perspective. Okay. So it seems to me that, as with much in life, good planning can help avoid problems. It can help make the work go smoothly, and I think that it, generally speaking, will lead to better quality results, both for the customer and indeed, for ourselves as customer success managers and for our own companies as well. So, are there any sort of specific best practice hints or tips or tools or technologies or methodologies that you can think of that you use when you're in that sort of situation that you can maybe give as advice for CSMs to help with their planning stages when they're with their customers?
Absolutely, Rick. I joke to myself, but I take it very seriously, the KISS principle, keep it simple, Sam. And I think first and foremost, simplicity in whatever we do is a beautiful thing. Because if we keep it simple, everybody around us will then not only understand it, but will be able to take action upon it based on their role. I think the second thing I'd like to share with the audience is it's okay at times to take risk, to try something different for the first time. Maybe it's performing a small pilot just to see what happens, to see how we could learn from it. I think the other thing in terms of best practice, especially if you're a project program manager or a customer success manager, is to encourage and empower those on the team to help take ownership and pride of what they do. And to do that, I think a key ingredient is being a servant leader, one who is passionate on teamwork, on effectively communicating, and together achieving results through trust, confidence, and integrity. You made a key point earlier, Rick, that I also want to to share, and in expanding on this point.
Please do.
Always ask yourself, when you look at good practice, best practice, etc., always ask yourself, especially up in the beginning of an initiative, ask yourself, why are we here? What are we trying to do? It helps to establish proper expectations to make sure the initiative gets off on the right track, that everybody buys into it, they understand their role, they understand their position, how it fits into the bigger perspective of the initiative you're doing, and what defines success, whether it be in customer success, some of the metrics and the KPIs I talked about earlier, and in that journey of customer success, or in that journey of managing a project, a very good best practice, which is, again, fundamental practice, is periodic status or check-ins to ensure everything is on track, making sure key milestones are achieved along that journey to achieve value for the customer.
Well, they say that knowledge is power, don't they? So if you're taking the measurements and you have the information, then of course you're able to make informed decisions. And of course, if you don't have the information, you can only make guesses. So I'm completely in agreement with you on that point.
Excellent.
One of the things that I found when I started myself a few years back, when I started exploring some of the more formal project management approaches and was reading some of the literature, some of the books about it, was that the world of project management seems to agree that actually one of the things that often, where a project fails, or let's say at least partially fails to meet its outcome requirements, is often down to the people who are responsible for or involved in the project, and that it's the people aspect that often is the bit that needs, therefore, the project manager, or in this instance the customer success manager, to be most in control of, aware of, and be ensuring understand what they're meant to be doing and be doing what they're meant to be doing, etc. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when we think of people, obviously they are the critical element in anything a company does. You can't be a successful company without the people. And when you look at project management principles in alignment to, say, performing customer success management activities, I think there's three key things that really are important to have front and center. From a project management standpoint, the work breakdown structure is simply what I kind of touched upon earlier. Who does what to whom, when, how, and why. Breaking activities down into different tasks. Okay, so if I'm a customer success manager, I'm probably working with various subject matter experts. I'm working probably with sales. I'm working probably with a whole host of different skill sets, trying to perform various initiatives, as I touched upon earlier. I think the other thing that's very important.
And sorry, apologies to interrupt you. Just to clarify for those who may not have come across it before, you mentioned the term work breakdown structure, which, if you haven't heard that expression, that actually is, I would define it as a classic. I'm doing inverted commas with my fingers here. A classic project management technique. Would that be a reasonable description?
That's exactly correct.
Which people can go and, if it interests you, the who does what to who, how, when, and why that Sam was talking about there. WBS, or work breakdown structure, is something that perhaps you could go and sort of Google and do some research on and get to grips with what it is and how it works. I would say fairly quickly. Would you agree?
Yes. And another, again, what I call project management technique, for lack of a better term, is the critical path method. Right. And that aligns very nicely also into customer success. Critical path method in layman's term is, where are those potential log jams, or where things come together that
Right.
this particular task, this particular activity has to be done. If not done, or if late being done, it holds up other resources that are contingent on that being done. So that's important also in performing customer success. Where are those inflection points that need to be done, say, on time, for the project to continue smoothly through its journey? And
Gotcha.
another technique that I think applies not only in project management, Rick, but also in customer success, is the RACI matrix, RACI.
Hmm.
And R for responsibility, A for accountability, C for consultative, and I for informative. And a nice analogy, Rick, that I like to use, being an avid sports fan, whether it be in soccer, baseball, football, etc. And the simple analogy to emphasize in this particular example is a baseball team.
Okay.
The baseball players are responsible, the R, for performing on the field,
Okay. Yeah.
but the baseball coach or manager is accountable for the team's overall success.
Right.
And then a hitting coach or a pitching coach are the consultants who work closely with the players on proper techniques and best practices to help improve their performance.
Right.
And then last but not least, the TV or radio announcers provide the eye or information of the team
Hmm.
to the fans it's serving. So if you look at the RACI matrix, what I like about this, it helps form the structure of an organization of these elements coming together, in this particular case, for fans rooting for the success of their favorite team.
Thank you so much for that. So, from that perspective, as we were saying earlier, of how many projects, if they're going to fail, a lot of the time it's due to not enough management of the people. And I think that one of the things about that can often be is not understanding A, who the people are, and B, what their role is within that inverted commas project. And something like the RACI matrix can make that a lot clearer, I think.
Absolutely. So I think these practices, say within project management,
Mm.
align very nicely, Rick, for the success of customer success managers.
Well, I would absolutely agree with you. And incidentally, guys, in the certified CSM professional training course, as it happens, those three tools, the work breakdown structure, the critical path method, and the RACI matrix, are actually covered. So if that interests you, then that might be something that you could look at as being, another good reason for going through that training program. But anyway, I diverse away from talking to Sam here. So, Sam, we've talked quite a bit about project management, and I think that most of us are probably more familiar with project management than program management, or certainly I am. But I totally get where you're coming from when you were explaining the difference. I think you defined it very well. Is there anything from the program management toolbox that could also be relevant and useful to customer success managers to know about and to use as a tool or a technique to help them in their activities?
Absolutely. Rick, I think first and foremost, back to my example earlier, whether you're baking chocolate chip cookies, building a bridge,
Hmm.
performing customer success within a customer's environment, I think simplicity is key,
Hmm.
because human nature says that if it's not complicated, it's not good. But I think when you look at successful people, I think when you look at successful organizations, simplicity is typically a key ingredient in that success. So I want to emphasize, keeping things simple is a very powerful thing to have front and center in anything that you do. The other thing that you touched upon is a customer success manager, project manager, program manager, doesn't matter, can never do it alone. It takes a team of people,
Mhm.
and a team of people coming together requires understanding of their skill set, relationships that are trusting, and when you bring those relationships together in a simple manner,
Mm.
I think the most gratifying thing is bringing that team together to achieve a common goal, to achieve a delighted customer that sees true value from what they purchase. And more importantly, Rick,
Mhm.
in accomplishing that, I truly believe it helps identify future revenue opportunities going forward in that true win-win relationship. And one other key point on this, Rick,
Yep.
that's why I like the title of your book, Practical Customer Success Management, because that practicality dimension is what is a key ingredient of achieving success.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And I mean, the thing that I take from what you've said, which I absolutely agree with, and I guess is why I was also, when I wrote that book, was trying to focus, as you say, on the practical side of things, is the experiences that I've had, and I've talked to and indeed trained, quite literally hundreds of customer success managers, and I would say that if there's one thing that they've all got in common, it's not enough time. So I don't know if you also have experienced that in your career, but there's always more things that a customer success manager could do than they have time to do. And I wonder again if you have any thoughts on that, and how a CSM might take some ideas from project or program management that may help them in terms of managing time, juggling multiple needs. I mean, one of the things I think that CSMs again struggle with is, uh, although they may have a line manager who is the person they directly report to, it's not as simple as that, because they've actually got a whole host of other masters who they've also got to report to, which are the stakeholders of all of the customers of all of the projects that they're working on. So again, I think it can be very complicated and difficult to, and perhaps tiring to, to manage the desires and the needs of all of these different sort of calls on one's time. Any thoughts?
Yes, I think what I said earlier in terms of the fundamental elements of project management, one of those is scope. And
Mm.
scope is very important to understand what's in scope and what's out of scope. Because I think one of the top um, things that impact the term you used earlier, a lot of time needed, and we don't have time to do a variety of things. You always have to ask yourself, whether it be in customer success, managing a project, or obviously managing multiple projects from a program perspective, is what's in scope. Because, again, human nature, you tend to drift out of scope because you try to be a good person, you try to help everybody, et cetera. But sometimes that's at the expense of time, and time is money, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing I would emphasize, make sure from a contractual standpoint, as we touched earlier, Rick, that there's definable things within time, a start time and end time, that need to be achieved within that time frame, and that is all centered around the scope of why you're there.
So by being clear at the beginning around what the expectation is, in terms of not just of outcome, but also in terms of the who's doing what, who, etc., when, where, why. By being clear about that, you can actually get a lot of time back, because you're not then having to do the scope creep because there is no clarity around it, and it enables you to know when you need to say yes and when, frankly, you need to say no, which is not always easy to do, but sometimes has to be done, right?
Yeah, and that sometimes saying no could potentially be a future revenue opportunity
Yeah,
also.
right. So it's not no, we can't do it. It's just we would need to see how we're going to do that, and it may involve a fee.
Exactly.
Okay, well, look, have we? I mean, it's been a great conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground about project management, program management, and how it relates to the role of the customer success manager. Have we missed anything essential that we ought to discuss before we draw this to a close?
Well, Rick, first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
No, not at all.
I think if there were three key things I'd like to share with you and your audience
Please do.
are the following. First, always be a sponge, meaning take advantage of the many opportunities that are available to broaden your skill set, whether it be delivering customer success in various industries, sizes, locations, etc. Participate in various certification programs, whether it be project management to become a PMP, project management professional, whether it be customer success management, such as you are offering to your various folks, Rick, in terms of your success program, and get an overall understanding, especially if you're in the IT arena, get an overall understanding of the various technologies, the various applications. Again, you don't have to be the smart person in the room, whether you're a project manager or a customer success manager. And when you're wrapping up an initiative in customer success projects, etc., always ask yourself, how can we be better the next time than we were this time in terms of continuously improving over time? I think this, go ahead, Rick.
No, go ahead. No, I was just thinking, great point. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
I think the second thing I'd like to leave with your audience, never lose sight of your soft skills, meaning always be a great listener, a great communicator, always deliver on what you promised, whether it be in the project itself or in delivering customer success on what the customer purchased. And don't worry about thinking you have to always have all of the answers, because thought leadership is simply asking the right questions rather than always having
Point.
the right
Yeah.
answers. And it gets those around you to think, which is a great thing. And then the last thing, have fun in what you're doing, enjoy what you're doing, because if you follow these simple techniques and concepts, the best is always yet to come.
Fantastic. Three great points to conclude our conversation on. Thank you very, very much, Samuel, for joining us. I really appreciated your time today. Speaking for myself, I found the conversation to be both interesting and enlightening. And I think that the topic of project and program management is one that all CSMs should be familiar with. And if they haven't got a grounding in it, and I'm not necessarily saying that everybody needs to go out there and become qualified as an expert, but the basics, I think, are really important for us all in customer success. So if you're not familiar with the basics, I think that there's lots of opportunity out there to get educated on them. Yeah, all sorts of ways of doing it, and I would certainly encourage CSMs to look at doing so. So, look, once again, thank you, Sam, for your time today. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to share it with your friends and colleagues. And also, please do check back at practicalcsm.com regularly for more free customer success related podcasts, videos, and articles. And finally, if you've not already done so, please go to our website at practicalcsm.com and sign up for our free monthly newsletter. Signing up for the newsletter also gains you access to download a copy of our 22-page overview of the Practical CSM framework, which we believe is a very valuable resource for CS professionals of all types. My name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, saying thank you for listening to this podcast, and I look forward to talking to you again in future episodes.